Let's start off by talking about what do you like about your job?
I like the fact that I don't have to wake up early like everybody else, which uh, I know a lot of people don't like that. And I just enjoy the flexibility of working from home, choosing my own hours, talking about the things that I like to talk about, that the things that interest me. Um, that's pretty much it.
Is there anything you don't like about your job?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be unstable, not knowing whether or not this month you're going to be able to make the amount of money that you know you're going to spend. Um, yes, the volatility of it, basically. Social media is not something that has been there for many years, so we don't know how the future is going to look like.
Do you think you will be doing this job in 5 to 10 years?
I hope so, but now with AI, I'm not so sure. It's come for all of us.
What has come for all of us?
AI has come to replace and it's to replace a lot of jobs. And weirdly enough, it started with creative work. We assumed like it's going to get rid of tedious tasks like repetitive things. But no, it's come for like writing, photography, generating video. It's all of the things that we kind of enjoy doing. So that's scary.
Now let's talk about your free time. What do you like to do in your free time?
Honestly, I've structured my life for it to revolve around my passion, which is YouTube. So I don't necessarily have free time. And when I have free time, I do something, but I justify doing it by connecting it to YouTube. So for example, if I were to watch a TV show, I would try to say, okay, I'm doing this because this is going to teach me how to make better videos. So you might call me a boring person, you know? But yeah, other than that, I really prioritize my health. So I like to kind of obsess over things when it comes to diet or optimizing my supplementation or even going to the gym and exercising.
Do you prefer to be alone during your free time or with other people?
It depends, but I think I would like to spend more time with friends when I'm free. I tend to get a lot of energy through conversation and laughter. Whereas I would choose to stay alone when I'm working.
What do you do to keep fit?
Uh,
Just jumping in to give you our free gift, we analysed hundreds of band 7, 8 and 9 speaking performances and we analysed the vocabulary. And we've put all the best words, phrases, idioms into one PDF for you. If you would like that, go to the description, click on the link, it's our gift to you. You can download it 100% for free.
I work out around 4 times a week. I used to work out a lot more regularly, but now with my schedule with shoots, especially overnight ones, and YouTube videos, it's become a bit more difficult. But I mostly want or try to go to the gym because I want to stay healthy as opposed to building what people would say an attractive body. So I prioritize being healthy and as healthy as possible.
Did you have different hobbies when you were a child?
Yeah, for sure. I play the guitar, piano. I used to make short films as a child, and those are the main ones. I forgot to say that I like learning languages on my free time now. So now I'm learning Russian, for example.
Let's talk about travel. Where was the last place you traveled to?
I traveled to Syria about 2 months ago, and I spent a couple of weeks there to spend time with my family.
Where is your favorite place to go on holiday?
Oh, it's hard to answer. It's like asking someone who your favorite children are. You know, my favorite place to go recently has been Paris, France. I've just fallen in love with the city.
What was it about Paris that you enjoyed?
Just the atmosphere, the cozy atmosphere, the romantic vibes, the beautiful architecture, and surprisingly, the friendly people. You know, they always say French people are not as welcoming, possibly, to people who don't necessarily speak their language, but they were very helpful, very nice. Yeah.
Now let's talk about personal qualities.
Mm.
What do you think is your best quality?
Oh, let me read off the list, you know? I'm not sure, you know, I think I'm very self aware. So even that remark about, oh, let me bring out the list, it made me feel a little bit egotistical. So being self aware is very important to me. Always knowing or keeping an eye of how people perceive you. And also knowing your faults, you know, knowing your weaknesses and trying to work on them or at least acknowledging them.
Did you inherit any traits from your parents?
I would like to think so. I think I've inherited uh, the work ethic. My parents are both very high achievers who devoted their life to help others. And I would like to say that I've inherited that from them.
What personal qualities do you look for in a new friend?
Honesty is very important to me. I think if someone is honest with themselves and others, you can pretty much tackle all other issues. Because if you were to find an issue with a person and if you were to confront them about it, and if they were honest about it, they would be able to acknowledge it and possibly work on it. Recently, there was the I'm not sure if it's NFL or it's what is it called? What it is called exactly, but it's American football. And there was the halftime event. Apparently, it's very important in the U.S. And there was some controversy around the performer who's called Bad Bunny. From what I assume, he's a Puerto Rican or a Latin uh, singer who's apparently not even a citizen. So my friend sent an Instagram reel, and he was saying how you know, people are on the right or on the left, they're like being annoyed that this opportunity came to this guy who might have some controversial opinions about the US and how it uses its resources. And I personally thought it was a non issue. As someone who's not American, I don't necessarily relate. So I might be a little bit biased. But I also understood why people would be angry. I mean, in the end, the song is in Spanish, from what I can understand, or Portuguese. I'm not sure. I think Spanish. And I saw a lot of videos of the event itself, and everybody seemed to not be enthusiastic at all. First of all, they didn't understand the words. I think personally that his voice is not up to par with someone who should be in such an important event. I'm not saying that every singer has to have an amazing voice, but yeah. And also, I understand people who found it to be super motivational and nice because apparently the song itself or the performance had a lot of messages about being yourself and like staying strong, keep going until you succeed.
So we've been talking about a news story. We're going to continue to talk about the news and also about different media like TV and radio. So let's talk about the news. In your country, how do people access the news?
Mostly through social media, more particularly Facebook.
And are people more interested in the local news, or do most people look at more international news?
I would say they're more interested in local news. I would say being interested in like the news outside of Syria is more of a luxury to that people who are more educated have usually. It's not something that you would find commonly.
Do you think that it is important for people to have access to international news?
Yes, I do, simply because I think outside events affect you, whether directly or indirectly, and you have the right to have access to it, whether you choose to engage in it or not.
Do you think that it's possible to consume too much news?
Definitely, yes. And I tend to see that. You know, I'm a strong believer of Stoicism and Stoic ethics, and they often talk about how you know, you shouldn't be as taken back and forth um, by outside events. So you should, you should not to go on a tangent, but you should focus on what you can control, because a lot of the news you can't really control. So you shouldn't necessarily expose yourself to.
Now let's talk about radio. Why are talk radio programs where members of the public can discuss things together, why are they so popular?
Interesting question. I think it's because public discourse has always been such a popular thing, whether it's in Roman times where people used to like gather in the public square and talk about things. And I think radio is just a more technologically advanced version of that. Freedom of speech is important, and it's always good to be exposed to different ideas.
What type of person do you think is most interested in getting on a radio talk show and talking about current events?
Getting on it, I think it's mostly someone who has something to sell. If you like, in the end, radio is a form of advertisement, and the person who would benefit the most is someone who might want to influence people into either having a mentality that would benefit them financially. Yeah, that's what I would assume. Not everyone, but yes.
And do you think that radio talk shows influence people in a good or a bad way?
Yes, they influence people in both good and bad ways. There are a lot of talk shows or radio shows, like, for example, Howard Stern, and where he tends to, kind of abuse or make the most out of someone, regardless of their emotional state, regardless of how much he makes them over share. Like, it's kind of preying on somebody's issues. I personally have a problem with that style. But if you were to critique it financially or in terms of entertainment value, that would be a different conversation.
So what I'm going to do is give you some advice on part 1, part 2, and part 3.
Okay.
More strategic advice, and then I'm going to give you your scores for grammar, vocabulary, fluency, and pronunciation. If you would like your speaking assessed one-on-one, we do offer that as part of our VIP package. To thank you for watching the video, I'll offer you 10% off. All you have to do is just go to the description, click the link, and you can get 10% off today. Part 1, you did very well. Very good development of your answers. So you answered every question, and then you developed it. You were giving examples, extra details, you're telling little personal stories, all very, very good. It felt like having a coffee or a drink with a friend, which is exactly what you should be doing in part 1. One issue that I noticed that you had, so fluency is about not speaking quickly. It is about the flow of what you're saying. And you often will, I think that you're capable of getting a band 9, but there's just a few too many of those in there. There are 2 reasons why people do that. So when someone is speaking a different language, often they will, they'll be trying to think of the correct grammar or the correct vocabulary. That is very common at lower levels because people are trying to grasp the right word. And they're like, they're just trying to access all the different files and like, oh, what is the word I'm thinking about? You do not have that problem. That is an excellent thing, because if you did have that problem, we would have a lot of work. You have the problem of, it's even common when people are speaking their own language. So do you know someone who speaks in Syria, and when they speak, everything's
Yeah.
There's no problem with their Arabic.
Yes.
There's no problem with their Arabic.
Yeah.
The problem is that they are thinking very deeply about, now Elon Musk speaks like this.
Yes.
If you listen to Elon Musk, he, that is because that guy just has so much information in his head that he's sorting through it all. You are making your life a little bit more difficult than it needs to be by you are listing lots of different things and you're accessing all these different files in your head, where you could make part 1 even better by just picking the easiest thing to talk about and developing that in a very simple, easy way for you. Similar with part 2, Your development was good. You could have talked about that for a long time. You could have talked about that for far more than 2 minutes. One thing I noticed you did, which does affect, I find, affects people's fluency, is you were looking down and reading. So remember when you were a kid in school, when the
Yeah.
teacher asks you to read from the book,
Yes.
and you're done. Like, did the kids sound fluent?
No.
No, compared to a conversation.
Of course, yeah.
So you were like looking down, reading the bullet point, and then you were talking about it and then reading it. So you were more focused on getting through the points and answering the question than you were about having a conversation. So imagine you and I went out for coffee and I was saying like, did you see that Bad Bunny concert? Would you look down
No.
and make some points? And then you would have no problem
Yeah.
talking about it. So use the points to help you if you get stuck, but try and lift your head, look at the person and have a normal conversation about that topic.
Would you say that looking at someone would actually affect?
For some people,
Okay.
yeah, for some people who are uncomfortable with eye contact, some people are very uncomfortable staring at somebody and having a normal conversation with them. For those people, looking down actually can help them. For you, I know you're a very confident person who likes to
nice.
speak and you speak for a living. Use that skill instead of looking down thinking about, now, the most important thing is that you talk about that topic.
Yeah.
So how you get around that is you start off, I want to talk about this new story. I want to talk about the Bad Bunny thing. And then you go on and talk about that
Yeah.
normally. I think you'll be far more fluent if you do that. And then if you get stuck, you're like, oh, I've run out of things to say. Then look down, have a glance, and then put your head up again and talk about it. Part 3, you gave quite short answers. So you probably think, I answered the question. What the examiner might think is they don't have enough English to talk about that topic. They're trying to avoid that topic.
Yeah.
And if you keep giving, the first few answers were quite short and not developed. Maybe it was you were uncomfortable talking about that, or maybe you didn't want to.
I think it's more something that I've developed with time, where I'm talking to real, like in real scenarios, where sometimes I tend to take over the conversation or overshare. And I've practiced to not, answer bigger than the question, basically.
Right.
So I assume that's the same here, but I guess that worked kind of against.
So that would be in a social situation.
Yes.
This is a speaking test.
Yeah.
So you want to speak.
All right. Switch off. Yes.
Yeah. Dominate the
All right.
the
Yeah.
conversation.
I won't let you ask questions.
One thing that I really liked was you took your answer and you directed it towards your area of expertise or things that you find very comfortable talking about. For example, stoicism. As soon as you started talking about stoicism, your fluency went through the roof. You just find it so easy to talk about that. A lot of, for example, we work with a lot of medical professionals and we'll ask them to talk, for example, talk about a news story. They'll talk about a medical news story because they can throw in all the medical lingo. Now, you can't do that for every single question, but if you can, steer it toward, like you talked about in Roman times, and then you were very fluent. I don't know if you're a history buff, or you could steer it towards YouTube, for example, but just make sure that you don't. Fluency is both. For speaking, it's, are you fluent and did you answer the question and develop your answer enough? If you try and steer it towards stoicism every time, you might not answer the question.
Sure.
So be careful not to fix one problem and then and create another problem at the same time. For part 3, how you can develop your answers a little bit more is always do what you did, which is directly answer the question. Then you can do a few different things. The easiest one is just explain why you think that and then give an example. So you did give some good examples, like you're talking about the Howard Stern show, for example.
Yeah.
Other times you might not be able to think of examples, but you can use your own personal life. So I ask about radio shows, like what radio shows do you listen to or do you not? Sometimes you can't think of any. That's where you would go to a Howard Stern show, like an example. You don't have to every time give an explanation, an example. Don't think that you have to do that. It's just giving you little tools that you could use. Another way that you could think about part 3 is normally you can divide this into two things. So do you think it's important for people to get international news? Some people think yes, other people think no. So you could say, well, some people think this. Here's why they think this. Other people,
Yeah. Nice.
they don't think that you should be concerned about that at all, or maybe you can consume too much news. And here's what they think.
Would you say it's better to have sorry to interrupt, less of a...
There you go again with your interruptions. I'm joking.
Would you say it's better to have less of an extreme take on these or no?
Well, if you're talking about what other people, then you're not being extreme. So you could say there are extremists out there that think that you should never hear any news, and there are people on the other side that think that you should be able. They're free speech absolutists that think that you should be able to hear everything. I, on the other hand, think that there should be a bit of a balance.
Nice.
You know, I think that people should have access to the news, but you shouldn't be allowed to say anything. Feel free to explore. You did one time say, that's an interesting question. You thought about it a little bit, and then you gave your answer.
Yeah.
You don't have to immediately give an answer.
Yeah.
Don't do what Elon Musk does, and he often, you'll ask him a question and he'll be like, wait 45 seconds to answer it. I'm being very critical of Elon in this.
No, yeah. He needs to learn from us.
It's good for the algorithm to mention all the comments.
Yeah. Why are you talking about Elon?
If you follow that advice, I think that you can really improve. Let's talk about the 4 marking criteria: grammar, vocabulary, fluency and coherence, and pronunciation. If we start off with pronunciation, I think this is probably your strongest area. The examiner will be thinking about 2 things. Number 1, clarity. Can they understand you? This is probably your greatest strength.
Oh, nice.
Every single word I can understand.
That's awesome.
There's never once where I'm like, what was that? The other great thing I love about your pronunciation is you don't sound British or American or something like that, which is often the case. It's very clear where you're from, but I understand every single word.
Okay,
and
nice.
I always think that's the best pronunciation.
Nice.
Because you didn't grow up speaking English, but you are extremely clear speaking English. So that's excellent. The other thing the examiner will be thinking about is higher level pronunciation features. So it's not just can I understand him, it's things like intonation. So does your voice go up and down to convey meaning? And sentence stress and word stress. Are you stressing certain words to convey meaning? You also do that very, very well.
Nice.
So there's never a time when I'm thinking like, oh, this person has just started learning English, or maybe they learned from a textbook and they're not used to actually speaking English regularly. It's obvious that you do speak English regularly and you speak at a very, very high level. So I don't know your background in learning English, but your pronunciation is very, very good.
Nice. I'm happy because I was a bit self-conscious about that. Like, I was worried people don't necessarily understand what I'm saying in my YouTube videos without captions.
Yeah, no, that is not.
Nice.
Not a worry at all.
Nice.
Not a worry at all. The other big strength that you have is vocabulary. Amazing vocabulary. You don't just have one word for something, you have multiple high-level phrases and words for different things. So for example, you're saying, I might be egotistical or I'm self-aware, I know my faults. So you're describing the same thing in multiple different high-level ways, but not in a show-offy way. Not like I'm going to say words like egotistical and self-aware and know your fault. You're not just throwing those in. You're using them naturally and very precisely.
Nice.
So that's what. And if an examiner is thinking, should I award them a band 9? They're thinking of, can this person in multiple different contexts use high-level vocabulary appropriately and accurately and precisely? And you're doing that over and over again. I noticed things like, it was a non-issue, he's a little biased, things like that. You're saying preying upon someone, all of these things, very, very high-level words. But that doesn't mean that you need to use these in every sentence. You only need to use them to convey meaning when you have to, and you do that very, very well. The 2 areas that I think that you can work on, one, you don't need to work on it that much, and the other you do is the thing that you need to work on the most. Grammar, you do have little slips every now and again, but these are minor and infrequent. So there's a difference between major grammar problems and minor grammar problems. A major grammar problem would be something that affects my ability to understand what you're actually saying. That never happened, the whole test.
Nice.
You are making little slips, little minor ones, but and we talk about frequency, these hardly ever happen.
No.
And if you listen to a native English speaker speaking for 30 minutes, they will make one or two little grammatical errors. They're called slips. I'm not worried about your grammar based on what I heard. I would have to listen to you a little bit more to figure out, is there some common areas that we need to work on? We worked on your writing before.
Yeah.
Your grammar when speaking is much better
Yeah.
than your but because punctuation is your
Yes.
biggest issue,
Sure.
and there's no punctuation in speaking.
I would assume like a lot of people have the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, most people struggle with writing a lot more than speaking, because if you think about the number of hours you've spoken English
Yeah.
versus the number of hours you write
Written.
essays
Yeah. And especially like with your
with a pen. Yeah. So imagine you played basketball for 10,000 hours and then you played cricket for 1 hour.
Yeah.
Which
Sure.
one would you?
Yeah.
You know. So
Yeah.
the biggest area of weakness is your fluency, and the good news is you can fix that very quickly, because it's not a language issue. It's a thinking of too many things. There's too many things going on in your head. You know the cameras are rolling. It's a test situation.
Yeah.
So you're a little bit too consumed with the content rather than just speaking clearly and at a natural pace. So I speak quite slowly because I want people to understand me, but I don't have poor fluency because the words are flowing without. If I was speaking slowly, the words are not flowing, that would be a problem. But don't, if you have one pause, one audible pause, don't panic and think,
Yeah.
oh, I failed my. Everybody does it. I do it all when I'm speaking to you. So
Yeah.
before the cameras were rolling, if you had have
I
recorded
barely
us
hear you
speaking,
do it, but yeah.
yes, but it's just a natural way of speaking.
Okay.
But the problem is the word is unnatural. So natural pausing, everybody does it in their native language. Unnatural pausing is caused by trying to find the right language or trying to find the right idea. I think this experience will have really improved you. I think next time you'll get a band 9.
Nice.
This time
Is
you'll-
that a promise?
8.5. Yeah. This time 8.5
Nice.
because of your fluency.
All right.
All right. So everything else is at a very high level. You wouldn't get the highest one just because of two things. One, you were pausing, audible pausing a little bit too much. And then in part 3, very short answers sometimes. So if you develop part 3 a little bit more and then relax about the content, next time you will do very, very well.
Nice to know.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome. Thank you so much.